as singers, what else do we need? We need a scratch track. We have the music part figured out. We need to practice to a metronome so that we can, get those takes. What else do we need before we go in the studio?
I would practice singing into a microphone. Mic technique is really crucial to getting the right product. Being able to control your what are called plosives, so like P sounds, those like puffs of air can really, when you have a really sensitive microphone that's right in front of you, you could have a really good take. And if your plosives aren't in control, or you have a lot of like S sounds that and how you're pronouncing the S's, and the direction in which you are, the angle at which your delivery is into the microphone can really affect how much of that is picked up. And there are some things we can do in post-production to control some of that or bring some of that back down. But if you can get it right going into the microphone, it's going to give you the best.
Hey Voxstar, and welcome to From Singer to Artist. I'm Lara Chapman, award-winning singer and songwriter turned viral vocal coach and the host of this show. At VoxTape Studios, we help singers from all over the world level up their voices by teaching them the 3 fundamental skills all singers need: technique, awareness, and artistry. Whether you're looking to go pro or just develop your voice for fun, my team and I are here to help. Check the link in the description to book your first session or grab some of our other resources. Alrighty, are you ready? Let's get started. Maybe you have written some songs and you're like, awesome, I love these songs, I want to get them out into the world, but you have no idea how to record your music or what the process would be like. Maybe it feels a little bit intimidating. If that's you, then I have some very good news for you here, because I have a very special guest with me here today talking about the whole recording process, what you need to prepare, and what it's going to be like in the studio. Welcome, Cam Melton.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So you're a singer, but you're also an engineer, and you have a recording studio. So not only have you produced your own stuff, but you've also produced music for other people too, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you for taking the time to be here and chat with us a little bit more about what actually goes into taking the song that you have written now and making it a reality so that you can, burn it on a CD, old school, or have it on Spotify or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
So let's maybe get started real quick with how you got into creating your own recording studio. I believe you opened it in 2019?
Yeah, right at the very end of 2019. We had our first client January of 2020. So
okay.
very well timed.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yeah.
But I had started recording my own music at home. I had built a very amateur recording studio at my house. And I had 2-channel interface, and I was mixing in Ableton, which in hindsight was probably not the most well-suited to the type of music that I was making, but you get your entry however you get your entry. From there, I was writing my own music. I started performing my own music out in public. I started touring around the Midwest, playing music. I met a really talented engineer, and he was looking to open a studio, and we got along really well, and we opened Milkman Recording Studios in at very tail end of 2019. We do original music from little singer-songwriters all the way up to full band productions. And we do podcast recording and post-production, so mixing, mastering of songs and videos.
You have a whole setup. You got a lot going on there. That's awesome.
You got to do what you got to do to keep the lights on. And
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So you have just so we can kind of paint the picture of what that studio looks like, because of, technology these days. It's become so much easier, bedroom producers essentially, right? Like making your own music, recording your own music at home in your bedroom. But with your studio, with Milkman Recording Studio, what does it look like? Is it like one big room where everything gets recorded, or do you have multiple sections, or are there instruments laying around? Is it kind of like what we see in the movies, or is it something completely different? Paint the picture for us.
Absolutely. So we've got 2 main rooms, a third if we need it.
Okay.
The room in which the music is actually made is called the live room. And in that room, I've got a bunch of acoustic treatment. So I've got sound absorption panels that are hanging from the ceiling, and I've got some on the walls.
Do you like mine?
I do.
They're the cheapest things I could find on Amazon.
I get that. It's expensive. It can be expensive. They're a lot more affordable if you build your own. And so I built a bunch of all of our acoustic treatment.
Amazing.
You can buy panels off the internet that are pretty affordable. Owens Corning 702. It's a yellow rigid fiberglass insulation. It's what a lot of like the pro level sound absorption panels are made out of. But you can buy those raw panels and then wrap them in fabric yourself and put a little frame around it. Cool. And they're way more affordable. We also have what are called gobos, and these are mobile sound absorption panels. So the ones I've got in our studio are about this wide, and I've got some that are 4 feet tall. I've got others that are about 7.5 feet tall.
Wow.
And you can use those to separate different sound sources. So say you have a drum kit in one part of the room and you got a singer in the other room. You don't want the drums in that vocal mic, because you want to be able to mix just that vocal in the vocal mic. And conversely, you don't want the vocal in all of your drum mics. You want to just be able to get the crack of the snare and the thump of the kick, and not worry about some ghost of a voice that's in that microphone. So we can position those gobos in between different sound sources to help isolate.
Cool. So is that the majority of what you do, is like the live recording where the entire band is playing together at the same time, or do you sometimes do one instrument after another?
I actually prefer to do one instrument after the other.
Okay.
It gives me a lot more control on the back end when we're going through the mixing and finishing process. And in order to do that, you kind of have to start out with that concept at the beginning. And I think that was one of the things I was going to talk about. So if you're a songwriter and you have a song, and the process can be really intimidating to record it and release it. It can be expensive. It can be time consuming. It's hard to coordinate getting all the musicians together. So one way to kind of go about it in a way it's a lot more approachable is to create a scratch track. Mm-hmm. And a scratch track is a basic outline of your song. Typically, you'll do it to a click track.
What's a click track?
So a click track is a metronome. So it's what keeps you on rhythm. So it's tick, 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 tick. Mm-hmm. And that's what keeps all of the musicians locked in. And so if you go back and you're mixing and you want to take a take from this section, everything is easily lined up so you can mix and match parts in order to get the best possible overall performance. And if you do it to a click track, it makes that so much easier to line everything up. So one skill that a lot of singers don't have, and a lot of singer-songwriters don't have, is practicing to a click track, practicing to a metronome. You can find them. There are free phone apps. There are
even just on Google. If you type in metronome, it'll show up right there. You give it the BPM, the beats per minute, right? How fast the metronome is clicking, and it's right there on Google. It's super easy.
And so if you get a really solid click track, scratch track performance, it makes it really easy for your musicians to really lock into the rhythm and to follow the overall structure of your song. And you can really go piece by piece. So you record your scratch track, and then you can bring in a drummer whenever it's convenient for the drummer. The drummer will come in, lay out the drum part, playing along to your scratch track. Then you can bring in a bass player. The bass player can play along with the drummer, or you can play along to the click track. And theoretically, they are both locked in with each other.
Even though they're not playing together.
Even
but
though they're not
because they
playing.
have the click track and the scratch track, they can follow along. What if I'm a singer and I have my song and basically all I have is the lyrics, the melody, and the chord progression, right? Like maybe I can play guitar or a little bit of piano, or somebody helped me with that, and I don't know any drummers or bassists or people who would like play the instruments. What then?
Well, networking is your friend in that regard.
Yes.
But any good studio is going to have a whole roster of drummers that they know. Mm-hmm. And there's so many drummers out there that are they're busy gigging, but they're almost all looking for session work where they can just come in and bang out a session part, which is what they call when a drummer comes in and just plays a part and then leaves. And that's a session musician. And typically that is a work for hire sort of thing. So you'll pay them somewhere between $50 and $200 a part, depends on what level of musician they are. I think $100 is fairly standard right now in Indianapolis, at least for kind of mid-level.
Yeah. In some major
musicians.
cities, it might be a little higher than that.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
And if you're going for a top-level drummer, even considerably more than that. But
yeah.
you can get really, really good drummer for $100 a song. And so if you're working on a budget and you're kind of worried about how your cash flow is, doing it the scratch track and then slowly building out your song that way, you can do it in a piecemeal fashion. So you don't have to fork over a whole bunch of money all at one time. You can kind of do it in little pieces and build your song over time.
There are also like like producers out there that sometimes like all of the music, like none of the music is played live. It's all electronic music that was put together. I know a lot of producers that do that. Is that something that you guys do at Milkman too, or do you only do live like instruments?
We've done a combination of both of them. I haven't done a whole lot of strictly electronica or electronic music in that way. I would like to. It just hasn't been the circles that I run in.
Yeah, Indianapolis, like we have a lot of like folky, singer-songwritery style musicians here. So it's maybe a little less electronic, but all of my songs that I released way back when I was still doing that, the producer that I was working with, he would maybe on one or two songs record a live guitar, but everything else was all electronic, no real instruments. So it just really kind of depends on how you're going about it and what kind of music you're making. But networking, I like that you brought that up, and studios have session musicians that they can recommend maybe, so that's awesome there. Let's pretend we have that figured out. Either we have the musicians that we're going to work with, or we are using an electronic track. Either way, as singers, what else do we need? We need a scratch track. We have the music part figured out. We need to practice to a metronome so that we can, get those takes. What else do we need before we go in the studio?
I would practice singing into a microphone. The mic technique is really crucial to getting the right product. Being able to control your what are called plosives, so like P sounds, those like puffs of air can really, when you have a really sensitive microphone that's right in front of you, you could have a really good take. And if your plosives aren't in control, or you have a lot of like S sounds that and how you're pronouncing the S's and the direction in which you are, the angle at which your delivery is into the microphone can really affect how much of that is picked up. And there are some things we can do in post-production to control some of that or bring some of that back down. But if you can get it right going into the microphone, it's going to give you the best chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever adjust the microphone depending on who you're working with?
Absolutely. And different voices work differently with different microphones. It's a lot of times it's just kind of guessing and trying out different microphones. So you might spend some time, your first time in the studio, trying out a few different mics and seeing what you like the sound of. There are a lot of different mics. I mean, this mic right here, SM7B, is a classic. Michael Jackson used this microphone, but you see a lot of podcasters use it. But it's really good because it doesn't have a whole lot of like proximity effect, and it doesn't pick up a whole lot of room noise. So if the room that you're singing in isn't as well treated, it's not going into the microphone.
Yeah.
But another type of microphone that you'll probably encounter in the studio is a large diaphragm condenser microphone, and it's a really sensitive microphone, and so it picks up a lot of the intricacies of your voice, and but it's also going to pick up a lot of the room noise. So it's pretty crucial with a large diaphragm condenser to have acoustic treatment in the space that you're in to reduce some of the echo that you're hearing in the room, or some bad interactions between sound waves as they're bouncing around off of hard surfaces.
Okay, cool. Yeah, microphone choice. When I was in the studio, again, many years ago, I was also, I don't remember what the mics were at all with the producer that I was working with, but he also switched it out on me after the first couple of takes. I was like, actually, let's use this one. Because I have a very big voice sometimes. And so, yeah, he was like, actually, let's try this other microphone. And it made a difference to him. I never like heard like, you know, the different takes on the different microphones. So I never like really, you know, noticed the difference because I never heard both of them. But he knew what he was doing. So I'm sure there was a reason why we did that.
Yeah, each mic has its own frequency response. So it picks up different levels of different frequencies. So some mics have kind of a darker color to them, meaning they're a little more pronounced in the low end, and there's a little bit less high-end frequency content relative to other microphones. And it really depends on an individual's voice, whether that suits it or whether it kind of hinders the process. So it really is a kind of just try it out, see what you like. I can make some informed guesses based on hearing someone sing what kind of microphones are going to work for them. But it can also depend on what the vibe of the song is that you're going for. Some microphones give a more saturated sound or a kind of a vintage sound. And, you know, that might be really cool for a song that's really kind of a classic country vibe or kind of an old crooner vibe. You know, it'll really suit that sort of song. Whereas for a more modern production, you might want something a bit cleaner and just more straightforward, transparent.
Okay, cool. You mentioned microphone technique, right? Like practicing with a microphone, because depending on, you know, how you're singing into the mic, it'll really change it. Do you have a couple tips for microphone technique for singers in the studio specifically? Because studio singing and live singing is different.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing is if you're getting a lot of plosives or a lot of the sibilants, which is the S sounds, you can kind of sing just a little bit off axis, not super far, but just a little bit, so that puff of air is going right to the side or right over the top of the microphone as opposed to going right into the capsule. That can be really useful. Another thing I would recommend is getting used to singing without reverb. Like, I know a lot of singers love having reverb because it makes you feel supported. But when you're trying to get a really good performance, you really want to focus on the tail end of every word that you're singing. And sometimes with reverb, it lets you get a little bit sloppier with that. Whereas there's no hiding. If there's no reverb, you're just hearing exactly what you're putting into that microphone. So,
interesting. Okay. It's so fun to see how the different engineers and producers like go about it. Some like having like ask their singers, do you want some reverb on that? And then, you know, the singer chooses if they want that on there. You recommend not doing that so that you can get hear exactly what you're putting into it rather than what kind of like the finished vocal is going to sound like. Because you're going to add reverb after the fact.
100%, generally,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And trust the engineer's gonna treat you right in the mixing process. I mean, there's definitely two schools of thought, which is you can make the singer hear it as close as it's going to be on the final record, to give them kind of an inspiring feeling of how they go about it. It's so much of it is just figuring out different ways to get that perfect performance out of the singer. And I think everybody is a little different in what's going to help them get there.
Yeah.
And so you can try both.
Okay, cool.
If you're struggling, try something else.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Don't just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, but try something else and see if it helps. Yeah.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So we practiced. We practiced with a scratch track, and we have a scratch track. We practiced with a click track. We practiced our microphone techniques. Microphone technique, also like proximity to the mic. Do you have any notes on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The closer you're going to get to a microphone, you're going to get a pronounced proximity effect. So that really enhances a lot of the lower frequency content. So you get a really nice deep bass sound, which can be really good for certain parts of a song or certain types of songs or certain singers. Other times you really don't want that. And so by practicing singing into a microphone, you can see how it affects the sound that's going into the microphone by how close you are to the microphone. Typically, with a large diaphragm, you're going to want to be at least like 4 inches from the microphone. To minimize, and you can put what's called a pop filter to prevent some of the plosives.
And this one kind of has like a built-in pop filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of the large diaphragms come very exposed. It's just a grill, a metal grill, and you can even see the capsule inside. So there's nothing really protecting it. So you can put a pop filter there, or you can stand a bit further back. Again, that's dependent upon how much acoustic treatment you have in the room. How much gain is on that microphone. Because some songs you want to have that microphone super hot so that it picks up all of the intricacies and you can hear even the mouth sounds and everything. So you feel like that singer is just like right there in front of you. And that is perfect for somebody like Billie Eilish. She has that very breathy singing, and she's probably really close to a very hot microphone, which is a gained up microphone where it's the volume is up very high on the microphone. And you can, and if you have your own microphone, you have your own interface or an amplifier or something, you can really practice making the microphone really hot and see what it sounds like when you get real close to it. See what it sounds like when you get back a bit from it. And, that can be a really good way to practice. So, when you get into the studio, you already know what you need to do to get the sound that you're looking for out of the microphone or into the microphone more.
And so when you're saying like practice it, like with a microphone, is like actually also record it so like you can hear the recording then at the end too, because I feel like a lot of times it's difficult to hear as we're doing it for a lot of singers.
Sure.
And so we listen to the recording to see what we just did, how it affected it. So not just practicing like singing into a mic, but then like also like recording what you're practicing so you can listen back and see how what you did affected it. Yeah.
Right. That can be super useful. I think it's really important to kind of do that debriefing at the end of a practice session where you go back and listen through what you were doing and see if you were hearing it correctly. And then you can kind of go into your next time and be a bit more deliberate with, okay, what do I need to do to get the sound that I want out of this microphone. What do I need to adjust about my performance or my proximity or my plosives or things like that in order to get a really good performance?
I also, in general, by the way, you guys, everybody listening, singers listening, practicing with a microphone and then listening back, like listening to the recording of it, is one of the best things you can do, because it helps you hear details that you probably haven't heard before. So it changes your vocal performance. Like, it changes some of the choices that somebody then makes. It helps you sing with less effort because you realize, oh, I don't need to work so hard. So it gives you a bigger range of colors that you're then using. And it just makes the vocal performance more interesting because there's more details in there that you can now actually hear. So always, always, always recommend that. Practicing with a microphone, recording it, listening back, and then make vocal choices based on that, based on what you hear.
Right. You can't lie to a tape.
No, no, you cannot. Yeah. No, you cannot. Okay, cool. So I feel like at this point, we're feeling prepared to go into the studio. What happens at the studio?
Sure. So it depends on if you're making that scratch track yourself, whereas you're playing along with yourself. Mm-hmm. So that first step is doing that scratch track, and that can be at the studio, that could be at home if you're really good if you have a setup at home. If not, do it at the studio. They'll be able to help you do it really quickly and efficiently and have it sound good and be really solid on that click track. And as far as the vocal day, often that scratch performance just gets trashed. It doesn't end up on the final record. Mm-hmm. You build up all the other parts, and then once you get that song built all the way up till it's just the last vocal, you hear how it's going to sound. It's very inspiring, and you can really hear what all the other instruments are doing, and it can help you really play off of what's going on in the track. Typically what I do is I try to get at least 5 good takes of the main vocal.
Okay. And
that gives me a chance to do what's called comping, or you're making a composite track. And so you're taking the best. Sometimes you go syllable by syllable even, or phrase by phrase, or word by word, or verse by verse. You're taking the best performance from each of those tracks and putting them all together, taking pieces of each and to piece together the best possible lead performance you can from those takes. And then from there, what we try to do is we try to create vocal doubles.
Wait, hold on. Before we dig into that, that's already the next step. Do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Sure. Yeah.
For the lead vocal, because we want to talk about the lead vocal real quick. You said you like having 5 takes. Do you ever separate it into, like, we're recording just the verse and then just the chorus, or is it 5 times through the entire song in a row, or like how do you go about it?
Yeah, we actually do break it down pretty often. It's at least verse by verse, chorus by chorus, if not sometimes taken phrase by phrase.
Okay.
And just making sure I've got 5 good takes of each part of the song. So typically it's going to be hard to get a really solid performance 5 times all the way straight through. Mm-hmm. By breaking it down into discrete sections, you can put a bit more focus and attention into each individual part, especially any part that you're going to struggle with. Say you've got a bridge where you've got a really high note or something that you got to hit. You can put that attention just in that one section to make sure you got really solid takes.
Yeah, that's definitely how we record it as well, and how I know everybody out there, when they record, they go section by section. And sometimes even just like, hey, we have the whole verse down 5 times, but this one word in phrase 3, I want to keep working that. Can we just do phrase 3 a couple times in a row? But it really kind of depends on the vocalist, I would say, too. Like, do they need the context of like the entire verse, or can they do just phrase 3 and get a good take out of that. I think it sometimes depends a little bit on the singer, right?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the entire song recorded. We have a bunch of takes. Then you, like the producer, the engineer, goes in and does the comping, right? Like taking the different parts from the different takes to get the quote unquote perfect lead vocal, right? Like whatever it is we want it to be, that's it. Awesome. Now doubling. I interrupted you there. So tell us more about what is that?
Yes, a lot of modern production, you will hear big vocal stacks. So there'll be multiple versions of the same vocal line. And what that does is it gives a really full sound to the vocal, and it creates some dimension to it, and it kind of has a smoothing effect in how all of those different parts kind of coalesce into a really nice round vocal sound. Some pop productions you'll have 20 versions of the same vocal. Ooh. which is crazy. But that's another good skill to practice before you come into the studio, is being able to sing the same part the same way over and over again. Mm-hmm. And that will make your session run a lot more smoothly.
Do you do doubles on the entire song or just certain sections?
It's definitely more common in the chorus to give it a bit more fullness. It really depends on the piece.
Okay.
There are some songs where we'll do a hard pan double and there is no lead in the middle. It's just two of the same performance on either side. And it gives a very wide sound to what you're hearing, because they're not exactly perfect. They're close, but they're not exactly perfect. And it takes that vocal from just sitting right here in the middle of the stereo field to making it spread all the way across. Mm-hmm.
Well, because that, you could be like, well, why do I need to double it? Why can't we just copy paste the lead vocal? Why do I need to record it like the same way? Because you want to try and get it as close as possible to the main, right? When you're doing doubling. So why not just copy paste?
You want those slight differences in the performance, the slight timing differences. You want the slight pitch differences. They all coalesce to give what's called a chorus effect. Mm-hmm. And that's the sound of having multiple of the same parts all stacked right on top of each other. And if they were all the same, it would just be louder, but you wouldn't hear any of the interaction between the different parts.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And also, maybe just to clarify too, just because you're doubling a vocal, that to the end, like at the listener at the end, like the finished product, it's not going to sound like they hear you 3 times. Right. Yeah. You
will experience it. I mean, it depends. Like the one I was talking about where they're hard panned.
Yeah.
You would probably notice that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like a lot of the modern pop productions, it would just sound like a singular voice. But it's all supported by much lower levels of the doubles, so they're down a little bit lower in the mix. But
lower in the mix meaning quieter
in the mix, yeah. But you would feel it if I were to push play with just one version of the vocal there, and then I stopped it, and then I pushed play with all of the doubles. You would go, okay. It's hard to really describe the effect. It's easier to experience it. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if you go on YouTube, you could find videos of people explaining or showing you, demonstrating that effect.
Yeah. And when you record doubles, do you do that the same day as you record lead, or do you have people come in like another day?
It's easier if you can do it the same day.
Okay.
It gives you a lot more continuity in performance, and like everyone's voice sounds a little bit different from day to day.
Yeah.
So the more you can sound exactly the same, the smoother the effect will be.
And it's also going to be fresh. Like how you just delivered that performance is going to be more fresh in your brain, in the front of your brain. Does that mean you're doing comping kind of like as you go? like rough comping at least. So you're doubling the take that you're actually wanting to double, because otherwise you're gonna not have, the doubles are not gonna line up with the lead if you change the lead.
Right, absolutely. So we'll do some rough mixing right on the fly.
Okay, very cool.
It's often easier with the artist right there. You can kind of go, well, which of these performances do you prefer? Do you like the way you delivered this word, or do you prefer the way you delivered it in this take?
Okay, very cool. Awesome. So we have lead done. We have doubles done. What about if we wanted to add any harmonies or ad-libs or anything like that?
Yeah. Depends on if you're doing your own harmonies or you've got a particular singer or somebody in your band that sings along with you. A lot of it's going to come down to their ability to like listen and make sure they're trying to match your timing as closely as possible. It really depends on the effect you're going for, because sometimes it's really kind of a magical effect when you're harmonizing with yourself, because your voice obviously lines up. It
blends well with itself, right?
And you can want that, or you might not want that. Sometimes the contrast between the harmony voice and the lead vocal is nice to have that contrast, because you can have like a deeper singer or you can have a higher singer, and that contrast really gives you a bit more spread in how you're experiencing the harmonies.
Yeah. I recorded all of my own for my songs, and I know a lot of people that do that, but then there's also like bands, right? Like when you're working with a full band, then they're all doing their parts, and so it just depends on your preference, I guess, like you said.
Absolutely.
Ad-libs, is that something you do before you do doubles, after you do doubles? Is that, the last thing you do?
It's definitely preference or what the singer's capabilities. Typically, we'll start out by doing a full run through of the whole song, and in that they would do the ad-libs as it came in the song. If that doesn't work, or they don't really know what they're doing, we can make that a particular focus of a session or a part of the session, where they can kind of really focus on nailing something that sounds really good. It depends on the skill set of the singer, or whether that's like a feature or just sort of a thing they do at the end of a phrase or something.
How long does that process take usually, recording vocals? Let's say you do the lead, you do the doubles, you do the harmony, and maybe you have a little bit of ad-libs in there, but you record everything yourself. How much time should a singer set aside for something like that?
I would say a 4-hour session, you should be able to get really good lead takes and vocal doubles, and get it comped, and then at least get a good start on the harmonies if you're not able to bang them all out. Yeah.
With my songs that I recorded again years ago, it took me 4 hours a song, usually. A little less depending on, how many harmonies and things like that we had to record, but usually, around 4 hours. So I'm glad you're on the same page there. Yay.
Absolutely. And a lot of that comes down to like how well the singer can deliver the same performances, or so like the more practice that you do ahead of time, the more prepared you are ahead of time, the more efficient your session is going to be, and the cheaper it's going to be over the long run. Because you don't have to do as many sessions. You can get it done in fewer number of hours. And also, the more familiar you get with the process, like maybe song 3 will be much faster than song 1. Yeah. Because you know what to expect now. You have been through the whole spiel, the whole system, so now you know what to expect, and you can get through it a little bit more quickly. But very cool. So everything is recorded. The vocals are recorded, the instruments are recorded, or we have an electronic track, like whatever. The music's all recorded. What now? Mixing. Okay. So sometimes that's the same engineer that did the tracking, the recording. Sometimes it's not. It's up to you who you want to have mixing your song. You could even find the mix engineers that mixed your favorite songs from the radio. They're all professionals. They all have a rate. So you can send them an email and see how much they want to charge for mixing your song if you want. Otherwise, if you go with the studio that you did the recording at, you can have them mix on their own time and then send you draft mixes. You can book the time and sit there with them while they mix. That can be really useful. I think one thing that can be that can help you get the product that you want out of the process is to come up with reference tracks. So these are songs that sound similar to what you want your song to sound like at the end. And that gives the engineer a way to know that he's on the right track or to push the song in the direction that you want the song to go. Otherwise, they'll bring their own biases and interests and whatever they're into that mixing process. So having really solid reference tracks can be a way to communicate ideas in ways that you might not have the words to communicate, but I want it to sound like this. And that gives the engineer a whole lot of information and a whole lot of different aspects as to how to go about mixing your sound to get you the product that you want. Okay. And when we look at mixing for vocals, like specifically, because most people listening and watching are singers, for vocals specifically, is this where, you add reverb and autotune and delay and whatever plugins and maybe finish up the comping and all of that? Is that where mixing, is that what that happens there? Absolutely. Yeah. So you can use autotune or I tend to prefer Melodyne. It's the same sort of concept, but it gives you a bit more transparent effect. So you don't hear that like flipping that you do with autotune a lot of times, which can be really good. It can be something useful. And if you're really going for that flipping sound like you hear from T-Pain or Post Malone or artists like that, sometimes it's really useful to put that in while you're tracking so you can sing into that auto-tune plugin and hear exactly how it's flipping. And you can use your voice in particular to make it do those sounds that you're wanting. And all of that's just pitch control and choosing how you're doing your vocal runs to make it do the flipping sound that you're looking for. Yeah. And sometimes even like I heard this from Simone Torres, a vocal producer out in LA. She records for some of the like vocal production only, not all of the other instruments too, but just vocal production specifically. She works for some of the biggest singers in Hollywood or with them. And she says that she's only ever worked with 2 singers who don't use autotune as they record. Not to, get the typical autotune kind of sound, but to make them not worry about the pitch. For Simone, she likes to make sure that the emotion comes out of them rather than worrying about, am I getting the pitches and the notes right? So you can record with autotune on and then always like not use autotune in the final. Like when you're mixing, right? Then she uses Melodyne. She actually uses both. She uses Melodyne and autotune for the final mixing. But that's just, different producers do it differently. Yeah. But yeah, she's worked with many singers, and only 2 of them don't record with autotune on the mic as they are recording. So what you hear is already the pitch corrected version as you're singing, like as you're recording the vocals. Only 2 don't like that. Fascinating. That's interesting. Yeah. But I guess it depends on the singer's preference. I actually tried it out when I was doing this workshop with her very recently. And it was the first time for me that I was recording with autotune on. I didn't do that when I was recording my stuff, but that was also years ago, so it wasn't very common yet back then. Yeah. And so I was doing that with the autotune on, and I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting. It does sound different, like because I've been recording one way for so long that it's like, oh my gosh, this is different now. But I kind of liked it because it just gave me that peace of mind, of like, like the pitch doesn't matter. We can fix that. It's the emotion, the tone, the little details. That's the thing that we can't fix, right? I may have to steal that trick. No, there you go. There you go. Shout out to Simone. We love you. You're amazing.
Yeah, but I guess it depends on like what does the singer like,
Yeah,
right? And also what
100%.
style, if they're maybe a little bit more folky, bluegrassy, that kind of stuff, then maybe that's not needed. But if you're doing more a pop track,
Yeah,
it might be helpful.
absolutely.
So, okay, so the mixing is all the plugins. So basically like the vocal's gonna, you have the delay, the reverb, the whatever. I don't know anything about that stuff. A lot of stuff goes on there so that the vocals sound perfect. Is this also where you make the doubles and the harmonies like blend already, or is that a mastering thing?
Yep, that'll be happening in the mixing stage.
In the mixing as well. Okay.
Yep. So typically in a vocal chain, you'll have some sort of pitch correction. You'll have EQ, which adjusts the frequency balances, so you can make the bring out some of the higher end, or you can kind of tame some of the lower frequencies depending upon what the performance demands. You'll typically see a compressor used in the vocal chain. This is to compress the dynamic range of the performance, and that can help keep the vocal sitting in the mix in the right place, so you don't get too quiet and get lost among all the other instruments, or too loud in certain sections and you're way out on top of the instruments. It just keeps you sitting in the right range, and it can add a nice saturated effect. Often depends upon what compressor plugin you're using or hardware unit. It'll often have reverb or delay sends. So delay is just a repeated version of the vocal. Could be a really cool effect in a lot of pop songs, especially at like the end of phrases. You can hear the delay pop out a couple times. Delay can be really useful because it tends to be a little bit cleaner than reverb. There's not as much just kind of muddiness that reverb can add. There are a lot of different kinds of reverb. There are a lot of different kinds of delays. You can have a stereo delay where it'll go to one side first and then go to the other, and that can give you a really cool sense of dimension. There are a lot of tricks you can do. You can saturate, so you're making it sound like it's running through a tube amplifier. It gives it kind of a fuzzy sound, fuzzy, thick sound. So think somebody like the Black Keys. That's a very saturated vocal sound. It's very distinct. It's not something you'd want on everything, but on their music in particular, it's just a really cool effect.
Okay, awesome. And maybe we also need to say, like, yes, there's a lot that you can do, like to make it sound fuller and blah, 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 blah. But really the only thing that is fixable in quotes is pitch, right? Like it's still not going to make somebody who cannot carry a tune sound like Celine Dion, right?
Right.
Like the vocal delivery needs to be there when you're recording to really get an awesome end result. There's a lot that can be done to, really get the most out of it, but you can't make something really bad sound really great.
Right. Performance is king, and getting that really good performance is really, that's where the magic happens. And I think that trick you got from Simone might be really useful, because I think even if your pitch isn't perfect or your timing isn't perfect, if your emotion and in how you're delivering it is super impactful, that may be a better performance than one that's like really technically perfect, but it's lacking some of that energy or interest.
100%. Totally agree. I love that. And then the last stage is mastering. What happens in the mastering?
So mastering is the final stage of the process, and the goal of mastering is to make your song sound good on every format. So it sounds good in the car, it sounds good through a phone speaker, it sounds good on Spotify, it sounds good on a CD. So basically, it's taking that final mix that you've got, and you'll have a stereo mix, so it's just a left-right channel, kind of a sheen that goes over the top. It's like the final polish and buff that really makes it pop and sound great. So they're adding things like multi-band compression, so they're compressing different frequency ranges differently, or they'll have often an EQ just to set that final EQ mix to make sure there's not too bassy, doesn't sound too thin. And again, they're trying to hit that like middle ground to make sure that it sounds good on every format. And when you're submitting your song to someplace like Spotify, you want your song to sound to sound like it's at a similar level to all the other songs.
There's nothing worse than when you're in a playlist and then one song is really loud and then the other song's like really quiet and then you have to like adjust on the go. Like that's where mixing comes in, right? To make sure it's all the same throughout everything.
Mastering, yeah.
Mastering, yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Yep, absolutely. And humans have a bias towards louder things. And so if your song is really quiet, people are just not going to like it as much, or they're going to think less of it.
Less professional. Yeah.
Just based on that. And your song won't get quite the chance that it should had you used a mastering engineer that is good at their craft.
But that's not something the singer needs to do. There's people that can do that for you. I never did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on if you're trying to do it all in-house. It is a learnable skill for sure.
Yeah.
But absolutely. And one thing I actually always recommend for our clients is that they go to somebody else for the mastering if we did the mixing and the tracking. I think it's always really good to have another set of ears on your product. Just somebody else who can hear things. Once you listen to the same song for hours and hours, you don't hear it as accurate. You start to be desensitized to certain parts, or you just kind of gloss over certain things that another set of ears who are fresh to it will pick up on.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good point. So you don't need to be able to do everything all at once, all at your like at the same time. No, maybe not even at the same time, but on your own. Get help, hire people who know what they're doing, and collaborate. I think that's great. I love that. So the song's done. Yeah. Now we just need to release it, and that's a conversation for another time. But like getting it distributed and all of that stuff that has nothing really to do anymore with the recording process of it. But that was super, super helpful. We can prepare for it, then we record the stuff, and then we mix it, and then we master it, and then there's a lot more that goes into it. But also, it's a streamlined process.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Anything that we didn't talk about the whole recording process that you want to mention?
I think all of that can sound really intimidating if you're new to the whole process. And if you don't have a whole lot of money, there are ways to go about doing it cheaply that are going to get you still a really good product. And a lot of it's going to depend on doing a lot of legwork ahead of your session. So if you can find a band of musicians and you can figure out how to perform, be able to deliver a really good performance, you could all get together in one room. The engineer can set up all of the microphones, and you could really bang it out really quick in one session. And that's probably the most affordable way to go. It gives you a lot less control on the back end, on the mixing end. But again, performance is king. And if you can get a really good performance that way, you could get your song recorded and finished and out into the world for much cheaper. And it just requires a little bit more organization and rehearsal and practice on the front end.
Okay. Very cool. If people are locally to like the Indianapolis area and they would like to work with you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, milkmanrecording.com.
How did you come up with that name?
Yeah. And how did I come up with Milkman?
Yeah.
So my partner's name is Rob Glass, and the first building that we were working in was an old building that was a Robert's Dairy building.
Okay.
And so you walk in the front door, and there's a big mural of a milkman.
Okay.
Right there in the front. And
awesome. I love it. Milkman Recording Studios.
That was the genesis. You can email me, cam@milkmanrecording.com would probably be the best way to get the ball rolling, or you can message us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Milkman Recording.
Perfect. I'll be sure to link to all of that as well. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
No, I'm just grateful to be here.
Thank you so much for giving us an insight into what is the recording process like, because like you said, it can feel very intimidating, but it's really, a lot of it is in your head, right? You're building it up to be this big thing, but when you're actually doing it, it's like, oh, there's people helping you with it, right? Like they're walking you through everything. Their whole job is to make you feel comfortable. So there's really nothing to be afraid of, and just give it a shot, and then you have an amazing recording of your song, and you can release it and share it with everybody. It's a really cool process.
I think so too.
I love it. Thank you so much, Cam, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope this was helpful. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions, and reach out to Cam if you're local to the Indianapolis area for some awesome recordings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.